when an operationally focused and a well-run company starts to exhibit the behaviors of a market-focused orientation, that's when the magic happened. And there were about 20% of those in the study where that was the case, and those companies grew faster than anybody else. Well-run, operationally focused companies that added in a market orientation, looking to the outside, aligning their company to the outside realities, those were the ones who grew the best. So let me ask Rainey and Sharon your thoughts on this. What do you see in your clients, in the businesses that you interact with? How does this shake out, and do these kinds of conclusions that we've drawn, do they play out in reality?
Oh, I have an example that might help.
I love examples. Thanks.
All right. A few years ago, I worked with a company that developed radar systems for our coastlines and our ports. And they worked with the Coast Guard, and they worked with the Port Authority to detect any kind of threat, whether it's, environmental or terrorism or et cetera, pirates, et cetera, against any of our waterways. And did you know the blue crab problem in the Chesapeake Bay was probably their biggest issue, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, so they wanted to know how they were going to grow because, there are only so many ports and so many waterways they could protect. They've been in business about 25 years, and they kept trying to find other entities that cared about the waterways. And either they had already purchased the solution, or we're using something else, or we're getting the data from someone else that was already a customer. I mean, the growth channels were really negligible. Or those contracts were going to large systems integrators that were building custom systems, which was their biggest threat. So when I engaged, they had struggled to grow for 5 or 10 years. And we took it back to the roots. We took it back to, what do you guys do really well? And they said, we're great at building radar systems that detect things that shouldn't be there. Whether you're, so we said, well, where can we use that technology? And, we explored 20 or 30 different industries. We looked at transportation, we looked at railroads, we looked at airlines. There were 2 problems that nobody was solving. One was in the cannabis industry. The systems that are building those grow houses, et cetera, require a lot of monitoring. There's a radio frequency ID on every plant, and it's supposed to be tracked from seed to consumption. And most of the grow houses were using camera systems like the Ring doorbell, and not very sophisticated. And so there was a real opportunity for them there. The other thing that we noted was a real threat to our airport security, which were flocks of birds taking down engines on airplanes. They're not supposed to be there. And because of the nature of the business and the contracts they have with the federal government and sort of the questions around the legality of cannabis, you can decide for yourselves which industry we went after. But after 3 to 5 years of not growing, the company doubled the next year and doubled again the year following by essentially going after this aviation problem and being able to detect the birds that were there, send out drones and fly through where they were and have them take off and not be there when the planes needed to come through that area. And so it was a really unique problem, and I don't think we would have gotten there if we hadn't have kind of gone out and talked to the customers and understood the markets in a really broad sense.
It's a great point. There are lots of engineers who come up with cool ideas, cool technology, build something, and nobody buys it because they haven't figured out where's the market for it. Rainey, what's your perspective?
So, being from Houston, as we know, oil and gas is always a huge challenge, and many of us have a niche or a really hard focus or strong focus in oil and gas, and we need to look outside of that market. And so I believe things like this pandemic caused a lot of companies to go out of business because they weren't looking at alternative markets. When I start working with clients, many times they think they know their market. What I usually find is that they've got maybe a digital marketing person on staff, but they assume that they are focused where they're going to make the biggest impact. And that's not true. And I love when I'm working with my clients and we start filling out the marketing strategy, which is supposed to be a subset, a summary of your strategic marketing plan, which usually doesn't exist, right? And so we're like, well, we'll best guess, and we kind of brainstorm and throw some stuff up on the whiteboard, but it's not based on data, it's not based on facts, it's not based on looking across the entire industry landscapes and focusing on one or two really prime targets. We want to make sure that we're not just, I like to say, you know, you can fire with a shotgun, but what would a rifle do, right? We would be able to get laser focused and not try to be all things. So a quick story about that. One of my clients, it was started out in home building, general construction. And by getting outside of their business, that marketing focus rather than operational, they were able to recognize a really strong niche, and that's in medical. Building doctor's office, veterinarian office, eye doctor. His wife's an eye doctor. She's also my client. So they were able to focus very strong in that niche. And it makes marketing really easy for them because the doctors talk to the other doctors and they're like, oh, you need to go talk to Mike. You know, he's going to be able to hook you up. And they literally, one of the doctors even redesigned his logo because they said it was a little outdated. So they wanted to, I mean, it's so funny, the strength of that activity.
Thank you. I love the stories. It's really important. And so, you know, marketing is often at the core of how companies grow. And what I find is most people don't really understand what marketing is. If you went to school around the time I did, which was a long time ago, the model was called the 4 Ps, you know, product, place, price, promotion. We're not going to go into what all those things mean. Some are not obvious. Now it's the 7 Ps and the 7 Cs. I don't even know what they are. But when I ask people what they're doing regarding marketing, what I hear is all about promotion, right? These other Ps, if you will, are very strategic if you think about them. But marketing has gotten to the point where it's all about promotion. It's my emails and social media and the pay-per-click advertising and whatever else that we're doing, the trade shows. So people think that if I do all of these things, if I have a great website, great sales collateral, and I do my email marketing, et cetera, that's going to generate leads that will end up being sales. And to a degree, it's true. Some of it works, a lot of it doesn't. And unfortunately, marketing has gotten the reputation with a lot of CEOs of being that black hole that I keep throwing money into, and I don't know what comes out, but I know I have to do something. So I just keep putting money in and hope that somehow something's going to come out, right? Well, there really is a better way, okay? We refer to all the tactical things with all due respect because marketing can't be really done without the tactical pieces, but we call that the little m marketing. It's all the stuff that has to be done, okay? But there is what we call the big M piece, the strategic pieces of marketing that make the little m piece work better. And so we've developed this model, as I referred to it earlier, called the growth gears. It's not rocket science. We didn't really make it up. We did what good marketing people do. We took a concept and branded it and made it easy to understand, okay? So insights we're going to talk about, the strategy we're going to talk about, but if you have good insight, and it leads to really good, well-focused strategy, then all of the execution, regardless of what you're doing, you're going to do it more intentionally because it's based on a plan, and it becomes much more measurable. And so that's the better approach to marketing.